I'm joined now by Kiran, Sidhu, and Katie Field, respectively the CEO and the Chief Strategy Officer of Halo Labs, and of course by my co-host, Todd Shapiro. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start off with the discussion surrounding the vape crisis engulfing the cannabis industry in the United States. The Center for Disease Control has issued a warning. The state of Massachusetts has full-out banned vaping. How is that going to affect or not affect Halo Labs, and tell me why?
So, first of all, it's our understanding, speaking to our lawyers and lobbyists, that the state of Oregon right now is going to wait to understand what the federal guidelines are. They've issued some stern warnings about cautioning people about using vapes in general. California's Department of Health also has issued warnings, but the governor has not acted there, so we don't anticipate a ban. There was some talk with LA City Council people about initiating a ban, and we've heard that's dissipated as well. As far as how it's impacted us, Katie can talk about that.
Sure, we've actually seen a little bit of a rising tide in vape sales. So it's something where potentially consumers were thinking something might happen, so they might want to stockpile a little bit. But the other dynamic, I think that's important to note, is that it's drawn awareness. The CDC's guidance has drawn awareness to the fact that actually the cartridges from the black market are the ones that may be causing this illness. Now, of course, there's more root cause diagnosis. They really have to get to the bottom of it. But potentially it can be driving consumers where they should be buying vape cartridges all along, which is from regulated manufacturers and retailers in states that have legal marijuana programs.
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, is it frustrating for you guys knowing that there is a black market that exists, obviously selling these vape pens that aren't compliant, that aren't being monitored? We're not quite sure where people are getting them, how they're made, and really how it impacts your business because of the reputation of them.
Absolutely. No, that's very frustrating. I think we want consumers to be educated. That's really what we want. And of course, when we manufacture, we're using natural cannabis concentrate. There are no additives. Not only that, our materials aren't grown with those pesticides and those additives that are coming into the black market vape cartridges. So consumers really do need to educate themselves. And so it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's a good time in our history for the conversation to shift to, again, regulated products that are safe for consumers.
Mm-hmm. Kiran, you mentioned that your aesthetic was derived from the concentrates industry.
Correct.
Which automatically implies that you're purists in the essential oil case of the inputs. Mm-hmm. So tell me, why does being from the concentrate side automatically give you that sort of mindset?
Okay, because the concentrates are the purest and most broadest spectrum form of cannabis. So effectively, what we do is we take the raw cannabis, either frozen or dried, and we put them in our columns, and then we extract them. And when they come out, then we purge any residual solvent from the extraction process. And those raw products are known as live resin, or shatter, or cured live resin, and then there are derivatives like butter and sauce and diamonds, depending on how you purge the residual solvent. So we have always been a proponent of that. Even though the THC content is lower, you have the full spectrum, the CBN, CBG, all of the Cs as well. So you get a true experience. Mm-hmm. And in Oregon, about 40% of our sales have always been derived by concentrates. When you start going into cartridges or oils, you're actually going now through a distillation process. And that distillation process is similar to what you do with alcohol. And so you basically evaporate the THC, you recollect it into a pure oil, and then you have to actually add back the natural terpenes, either botanically derived or derived from the cannabis, to give flavor to it. That's still a 100% natural process. And in the old days, what was interesting, before distillation, we were one of the first companies ever to put out carts, and it was the old plastic carts with an old wax wicker that sat on top of a battery. And our oil would always separate. And even in those days, we knew there were tricks because medical companies use it. They use vitamin E, they use polyglycol, VPEG, all of these products to line the lungs when people use inhaler. And we never used it. So what we used to do was we used to put out a little flyer saying that you got to treat our cartridges like milk, because if you don't treat them like milk, they get too hot, they're going to spoil and separate, or if you freeze them too much, then they're going to still separate. So, I mean, that was always sort of our credo, was always to be 100% natural, and that's why we're so focused on the concentrates.
Okay, so is it safe to say that the principal issue with the health crisis surrounding vaping, is it uniquely to do with the additives that are there to stabilize the main product, which is the resin?
I think that it's probably too early to tell what the precise cause is, and I, for one, am very grateful that the federal government is looking like they're going to start researching and getting to the bottom of it. Potentially, states will be doing the same, and that will be really good. But I do think that is a valid hypothesis, the fact that there are these additives that have been used to keep the consistency of the distillate that is going into the vape pens. So that is definitely one area. But again, another area could be the cartridge itself. Cartridges, we look at them and we think they're the same. They're not the same. It depends on the heating mechanism. Is it convective? Is it conductive? There are so many factors that go into the vape cartridge hardware itself. And that could be an area where there is disintegration once it's heated. Heavy metals, potentially from the hardware, get caught up in the vapor stream. So there really are, I guess the point is, various hypotheses. The one that you mentioned is one of them, though. And we've never put those additives in our concentrate, and we're proud, and we stand by that.
So tell me how the DabTab and the Shatterizer are going to protect users of Halo's products from having any health issues.
Sure. Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is when we were just touching on that, the cause of this potential illness, and we talked about convective versus conductive heating. So this is actually the technology that's within the DabTabs, which means that when you are heating the dablet, and we'll get to that in a second, what it does is it doesn't directly interact with the oil itself that's already infused into the ceramic tablet, that's already been safety tested. It's subject to many tests. It's going through an FDA pathway. And so what happens is it's just released, and the hot air is what unlocks and activates, and then that creates that vapor stream versus interacting directly with the metal heating element. So it's the hardware, these two elements, which we have two right here. This is the all-in-one, and then this is the Shatterizer. But then the oil itself is in this ceramic tablet. Again, they're subject to certain standards, NSF, ASTM, made in a factory in America, ISO 9000, so highest standards of purity. Moreover, the oil is encased in it again, so there's no interaction with the wick. There's no direct interaction with the metallic heating element. So it really is a perfectly natural vaporization experience. It's completely natural and very, very, very safe. So we're really proud of that.
When was this product created, and was it created to be proactive in case potential problems with sort of these other cheap vaping methods?
Absolutely. It was created. It was proactive. So the founder, Michael Linders, the CEO of ELO, and he's a complete visionary. And one of the steps in the process to making this was taking all the other hardware on the market, all the other cartridges on the market, and dissecting them. He calls them his Frankensteins. He has so many of these, and you have to get some photography of it because it's just... I remember, growing up, they'd do the Just Say No campaigns, and they'd show us, this is what your lung looks like if you smoke cigarettes. It's that type of thing. When you peel back the onion and you just see what happens to these cartridges when they're used over time, consumers would really be kind of horrified. This was developed for that purpose exactly. This does not happen. This does not happen to the tablet. The only thing that happens is that the color changes because you can tell that all the oil has been vaporized, and that's it. There's no charring. There's none of that.
Does that help for longevity then for the product itself, in terms of if you were to buy a DabTab, if you were to buy a Shatterizer, that it lasts much longer?
It actually does. It actually does, and that's another component of it too. There isn't the waste that with some of the cartridge you don't like to burn it at the ends because maybe the taste isn't great or you can't get it all out. That's not the case with these, and it's perfectly dosable in that sense as well, which helps the user, the consumer, control their dose. And that's another great benefit.
So there has been no instances of any Halo Labs product user having a health issue with vaping.
Not at all, and we have many users of our products every month for the past 3, 4, 5 years, however long we've been in Oregon and then California now, never been an issue. And we know because we stand by our manufacturing methods and we stand by the technology that we use and the hardware that we use. So.
Right, so they're essentially safe.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We'll come back to you soon.
All right,
Thanks.
sure. Thanks for having us.
Only one, two, three.